Good morning, everyone. Oh, come on. Good morning, everyone. All right, there we go. Are you fired up? All right, all right. And welcome to everybody joining us online right now. So welcome to the White House, everybody. How many of you, raise your hand if it's the first time you've been to the White House, raise your hand. So quite a few people are raising their hands, right? How many of you have been here more than one time, raise your hand. Okay, a little fewer, a little bit more. You know, it's always a privilege and honor to be at the White House and to have all of you join us, both physically and virtually, and to sort of gather the extraordinary ideas from across the country, which is why you're here. And we're going to get into it a little bit more about why we're here, but we want to say a few things before I introduce our few speakers. So please join us on social media at hashtag #WHMeetup. We'd love for you to share your ideas live. If you hear something that someone says up here today, we'd love for you to engage with them. If they're asking for help on something, we'd love for you to hop online and see what you can do to connect with them. We want this to be a really interesting and fun day. And so we're going to kick off our day with someone who I personally really have grown to love from afar, because I don't get to work with Megan every single day, but she's someone who's quite extraordinary. I want to take a moment to introduce her to you. So Megan Smith is the United States Chief Technology Officer and Assistant to the President of the United States. Before becoming the first female US CTO, Megan was Vice President at Google, first leading new business development, where she managed early-stage partnerships, pilot explorations, and technology licensing across Google's global engineering and product teams for 9 years, and later serving as a VP in the leadership team at Google X, where she co-created the company's Solve for X Innovation Community Project, as well as its Women Tech Makers, a tech diversity initiative, and worked on a range of other projects while at Google. During her tenure, she led the company's acquisitions of major platforms such as Google Earth, Google Maps, and Picasa, as well as serving as the GM of Google.org during its engineering transition, adding Google Crisis Response, Google for Nonprofits, and Earth Outreach engines, and increased employee engagement, all under her leadership and her tenure there. Megan previously served as the CEO of Planet Out, a leading LGBT online community in the early days of the web. But what I think makes her really special here is her energy and passion for connecting people across the federal government, in the White House, and making sure that the work that she does here touches the lives of Americans and everyone around the world. Please join me in welcoming the United States Chief Technology Officer, Megan Smith.
Hello, everybody. Okay, I put on my jeans and my Fed jacket, so I'm like looking sort of tech and a little bit White House. So it's great to be here with you guys. You know, everybody in this room, just first thanks to everyone for getting here. You're from, I think, almost 40 states. You represent not only the amazing tech meetup communities that are sort of all over our country, there's also, in addition to that incredible core, innovators in sort of startup incubators, folks who are doing really interesting work with all different communities in our country who haven't necessarily always been in tech, just innovating across the board, some Internet of Things people, just everywhere. So really are happy to have you here. We have some folks who are more the government side, some folks who are from bigger companies, some folks who are from brand new startups, folks who are doing nonprofit work, a lot of community organizing and sort of getting things done on that side. So it's great to have you here. I guess the main thing that all of you share is this passion for getting things done on the things that you believe need to happen in this country. Some of them are deeply around economic development and innovation. Some of them are about inclusion and communities. And they really, you know, we're here in the White House, as Raphael said, it's such an honor to be here. This is sort of the nexus where a whole country comes together. And you think about the giants on which we stand on their shoulders. And even sort of the community organizers nature of our founders and the cross-functionality of them. And, you know, they were techies too. So you think of Benjamin Franklin and George Washington. These folks were, of course, incredible civic leaders and the leaders in the founding of our country, Thomas Jefferson, but they also were techies too. You know, Washington is famous for his work in surveying and geo and mapping, and how important is mapping, you know, today, and it continues. Benjamin Franklin, of course, an extraordinary statesman, but he also, you know, in the internet of the day was print. And, you know, what a famous printer. And he also, a lot of people don't know that he deployed his apprentices out to the colonies to make sure that the printing process and the printing process were really strong in all the colonies. Sort of an interesting thing. So thinking about the internet of their day. You know, the women weren't at the table in the way they are now, and a lot of different groups weren't at the table, but I'd always think, I love the book where Abigail and John Adams' correspondence is clear, so they were actually there. They just might not have been physically in all of the paintings and allowed in the room, but their voices were there in some cases, and certainly in their leadership. So I just want to sort of note that historic moment of where we stand on their shoulders and what is it that our time is about. And to me, you represent those innovators just like them, you know, who are leading the field, leading the front, across all the topics that you guys are personally passionate about, and getting that done in your communities. Because really, at the end of the day, everything really happens in place. It happens locally. It happens in our communities, even if it's a scaled idea that can go all around the world. So it's the best of us. It also, you guys represent something new that we have, which is sort of the internet. You know, we hadn't had that before, and have anybody in here ever heard of or read the Clue Train Manifesto of old? Yeah, there's a couple of people. And there's a new publication those guys came out with called New Clues. And it's a list, the first one is really interesting because it says the internet is not some plumbing or some computers or some whatever. It's just us, connected. And I love thinking about that. The good side of that is we're bringing all these incredible things we do online and interconnecting. Of course, we bring some of our bad stuff too, right? So some of our misogyny and racism and all that stuff comes into the internet too. But mostly we're bringing the good, and we can use the internet to try to reduce a lot of those things. And by it becoming more visible, we can leverage that. One of the things in the clues, number 1 is, of course, the internet's us. Number 12 is a really interesting one. It says there hasn't been an invention as profound since language. I love thinking about that because I feel like we're like in the pre-Model T days of what we're going to use this medium for, and you guys are on the bleeding edge front of that as folks who use this new technology to bring human beings, bring people throughout your community together on all the things they and you are passionate about in all these areas. So I'm glad we're here together, and I think that this is really the beginning of something interesting. So we have 3 goals today with everybody. So the structure you can see this morning, we're here in South Court, and we're going to hear amazing spotlight rounds from lots of different folks. Every single person in this room could come up here and tell you a spotlight thing that they're doing. You are doing extraordinary things. So we did kind of a mix and grabbed about half folks who are doing Meetup work with the Meetup team and things that are happening in all kinds of places, different states, and different takes that people have. And I think that's going to be interesting to folks to see that. And then a cross mix of about half people are innovating in different ways with particular communities, startup centers, youth outreach, et cetera. So that's going to be interesting. There's 3 themes you can see on the agenda. One is more about education and skills. The second one is more around innovation and, entrepreneurship. And the third one is tech for social change and economic development. So we'll run through those rapid fire, and that should be pretty fun. And then after that, and then also Scott's going to lead us on a meetup of the meetup right before that, in between Jeff speaking. In the afternoon, we have an unconference. So it's to be decided what we will talk about. But everyone in this room has something to bring, and so I encourage everyone to sign those things up. The goal we have are sort of threefold in doing that work. The first one is we want to capacity build each other. We want to hear about amazing things people have already invented, and cross-share that and really help each other take this to a whole other level that you guys have done and you will do. The second one is there's a lot more neighbors in all of our communities who aren't in on this game. And so how can we work together to figure out our distribution inclusion strategy for all these folks? And I just wanted 3 quick stories. One is about a friend of mine who, 2 friends who were walking by a guy who was homeless, always seeing him on the street. So one day this guy decided to ask him a question. He said, I could give you some money and help you out, or I could give you a laptop and teach you to code. Which one would you like? And the guy chose the coding, and his startup's already made $14,000. So maybe we could think differently about all our other neighbors who are out there. And so I think he's someone to keep in mind, who are the people who are stuck for whatever reason, whatever circumstance, aren't in on this game, who are there. The other one I think about is our youth. The My Brother's Keeper folks, Michael Smith is here, I think, or he may not have come in, but he's speaking today. It is not okay that 1 out of 3 African-American boys are going to jail. And there's no reason why we're doing that as a country. And what are we doing to include them in our world? So everyone in this room could do something about that if you're passionate about it, and I hope you are, because those are extraordinary kids that we need to pull into this. And I think about them every day. How are we pulling those kids in and all the kids like them? I was in Afghanistan when I was working at Google, and I remember one of the security guys telling us about landing into Kandahar. And every day they were landing, and he would look out, and this little boy would run out of his house and lie on top of his roof. And he thought, why is that kid doing it? He likes planes. One day they happened to be near there, so he visited the kid's house. And he found out from the kid that he was running out of his house to lie on top of the solar collector so that it didn't break. Right? So think about him. He's the talented kid that we want to unlock and bring into this community. There's no reason why he can't become one of the main leaders of Afghanistan, just like the kids in our country. So those are the images that I want you guys to be thinking about, because we collectively are such community organizers, and we have these superpowers of tech, and we have each other, and so we can figure out how to pull these folks in. So we're going to think about that, and as part of that, you know, we in the White House, Jeff Zients, who's one of my amazing colleagues, is about to come up and talk about one of our initiatives, which is called Tech Hire, and a bunch of his vision around. He leads the National Economic Council. And so how are we getting Americans in onto this amazing economy that you guys are part of, and how are we lifting the economy in general and the amazing strategies that his team are doing. And throughout the day, you're going to hear from different leaders about whether it's Connect Ed. Only 30% of our classrooms in class are online. Like, that's a crazy thing. What could we do in our local community to help those superintendents? How can we organize ourselves? Our veterans, what are we doing to pull them into these jobs? What are we doing with our women and girls, with our tribal folks, with our innovation ideas? Some of the US Ignite folks are here working on super high-speed internet ideas that we could have too. You know, the Internet of Things are coming, so are we bringing our mayors and sort of playing with the city and our universities? Are we doing these things together? And how we're bringing TQ, I call it, our tech skills like EQ, IQ, into all those parts of our city that we could have. Climate change, and one of my favorite ones is the 100-year anniversary of the national parks coming up. And there's a strategy, could we have every kid in a park this year? How do we do that, and how can we organize ourselves to make that happen? And so people are working on that. So, you know, in that, I think we'll have deep impact on climate and on perspective and on health and everything. So I'm going to end there, and Jeff's going to come up. Just want to thank Scott and the amazing Meetup team, our team with Matthew and Aiden and Marvin and others for pulling this together. It's going to be an awesome day. And I've known Scott since the beginning of the internet, and he's one of the most extraordinary community organizers I know. So after Jeff comes up, I think he's going to lead us on a meetup of the meetups. So my colleague, Jeff Zients.
So Megan is one of the coolest things that's happened in this White House since I've been here. The TQ is evident everywhere, and it gives us a boost of energy and innovation, and all of you are doing the same today, so thank you for being here. Before I stepped into this building, almost exactly 6 years ago, I'd never stepped in government, so if I had been in this audience, it would have been my first time in the White House. But now I've been here for 6 years and have learned a lot, and one of the great joys is working with Megan and her team, and we do a lot together. I was with a friend of mine who's a leading economist the other day, and he was dressed how you all are dressed for the most part, which made me quite jealous because he used to be in the administration and he used to dress like this. And he said, beware of people in the private sector who have ties and suits on because it means they're trying to raise money. Relax, I'm not trying to raise money today from all of you, but I am trying to get you interested in a venture, and it's an early stage venture that I'm really hoping you all will help us accelerate, and I think some of you already are, so thank you for that. Let me start just by framing up where we are on jobs and the economy. Over the past 5 years, our businesses, and it's very important, this recovery has been led by the private sector, have created more than 12 million new jobs, and the unemployment rate is down to 5.5%. We've seen economic momentum pick up, and that means more jobs and more opportunities for all Americans. But we've got a lot to do still to build on that progress and strengthen wage growth in particular. So we've got unemployment down, but wage growth just starting to tick up. And this is a several decades old problem to make sure that the benefits of our economy are more broadly shared. And we've got to make sure that, as Megan talked about, all Americans get access to opportunity. Hardworking moms that are trying to re-enter the labor market and upgrade their skills while raising a family. Both boys and young men of color. Megan spoke about the My Brother's Keeper initiative. This group faces persistent opportunity gaps, or those coming back into civilian life having served our country so bravely in the military. And accomplishing that goal of providing opportunity for everybody is an all-hands effort. Everyone's got to be involved. Federal government, local government, private sector, nonprofits, tech innovators, all working together. And the good news is that this room represents many different sectors, many different parts of the country, different talents, and this coming together from all over the country is really a powerful way to move this forward. And what you all have in common, which is this TQ and problem solving and opportunity spotting, is that you're ready to tackle all of this and get something done. So I want to spend a few minutes making my pitch. It's a very specific initiative. It's focused on empowering every American with the education and training they need to get a job that pays well and promotes economic growth. It's called Tech Hire, and it's squarely on this target of technology and well-paying jobs for all Americans who want that opportunity. So I talked about 12 million jobs in the last 5 years. That's good progress. At the same time, we have 5 million jobs that are open today. That's more than any point since 2001. So 5 million job openings. And over 500,000 of those jobs, so more than 10% of those jobs, are in information technology. That's far and away the largest category. So 500,000 jobs in this country in IT are unfilled. And the good news about these jobs is that they pay more. On average, tech jobs pay 50% more than average private sector jobs. So this is a big opportunity. But I think many Americans, too many Americans, think of these jobs as not possible, just out of their reach. That they're only in places like Silicon Valley, or that they all require a 4, 5, 6-year degree in computer science. And all of you know that's just not the case. These well-paying IT jobs are throughout the country, from Albuquerque to St. Louis to Delaware. Everywhere there are IT opportunities, and they're not just in technology. They're across all industries, from healthcare to retail services to manufacturing. So there are IT jobs in every corner of America, from big cities to small towns, and in every sector of the economy. And there's every reason to believe that the 500,000 open jobs today, that the demand is going to continue to grow. This is not a one-time opportunity. This is an evergreen opportunity for years to come. So getting Americans to fill these well-paying jobs is not only the right thing to do, but it's really important for our country's position in the global economy. If we're not producing enough tech workers, our leadership in global innovation, and we're really in a league of our own in terms of innovation, and it's one of our great sources of competitive advantage in this global economy. But if we can't fill the jobs, that leadership position could be at stake. America is where entrepreneurs come to build the greatest tech companies. It's where the most leading edge ideas are born and launched, and we've got to keep it that way. The cool thing that's going on is innovation is coming to the training and education space itself. And that's great, because that can help us meet this growing demand for well-trained tech workforce. The innovation includes much more efficient and effective online training programs, coding boot camps, as well as high-quality community college and university-affiliated programs. There's innovation across the tech and education sector. And what's so promising are the outcomes. These innovative training models can get people ready to work and hired into well-paying jobs, often in just a few months, 3 to 6 months of intensive training, rather than the years of classroom training that we think of with a more traditional degree. So technology itself has transformed the way we live and the way we work. We all know that, but it's now transforming the way we equip Americans with new skills as well. So that's particularly exciting and promising for our future. So it's the combination of these factors that led us to the Tech Hire initiative. The president announced it in front of a big room, a couple thousand local and national leaders, mayors, governors, and local state legislatures. And he announced the initiative to get more Americans ready for well-paying IT jobs and the power of these new training models that I just talked about. And the initiative was incredibly well received. 3 components. First, mayors and other state and local leaders from 21 communities like Albuquerque, San Antonio, and Philadelphia. They together, these 21 communities, have 120,000 of those 500,000 unfilled jobs in their communities. They've all come together to take action, working with each other and national employers who are in their cities and local areas to expand access to tech jobs. Second, leading private sector companies are stepping up to the plate and making major commitments that will support and expand continued innovation and technology training with a special focus on reaching those populations we talked about earlier that have traditionally been underserved and underrepresented. Lastly, the president announced the federal government will do its part in addition to convening and bringing folks together and lifting up best practices. The president announced a new $100 million federal grant competition. That competition will support the expansion and growth of these strategies that are proven to work, the strategies that are training workers faster and more efficiently and placing them in jobs at high rates. So what's next for Tech Hire? This is an early stage venture, and we need all of you to help out here. First, we're working with that first wave of 21 communities to make sure they're driving strong execution and capturing lessons learned and best practices to share with other communities. Second, the president is encouraging more communities to follow the lead of the first 21 with a goal, a stretch goal, of doubling by year end. Third, the president is challenging all employers across the country to adopt more inclusive hiring practices so that anyone who can demonstrate they can do the job can actually get the job. So that's where all of you come in. We need you to help lead this effort. When I think about where we are on Tech Hire and look at people in this room, the mental image that comes to mind is a marathon. In fact, the first couple miles of a marathon, if you were able to helicopter up, I did try a marathon once. I didn't quite finish, but I did at least do the first couple miles. If you helicopter up, after a couple miles, there's this little pack that's ahead of everybody else. Those who are in really good shape, who can run really fast for 26 miles. And you know everyone eventually is going to catch up with them, but those leaders set the course, and they know where to head. And that's what all of you are. You are the vanguard. You're at the head of the pack, and you're getting there faster. So I need, the ask here is that as the vanguard of tech efforts in your community, we need all of you to continue to chart this course. We want Tech Hire to be part of that so others will follow in your footsteps. You are the leaders, and we need you to lead on this initiative. So as you participate in the sessions here today, please keep Tech Hire in mind and how we can bring together a larger, more diverse group of Americans into the tech sector so they can take advantage of these big opportunities that exist. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for bringing all your energy and creativity here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, and to Megan. And already there are some themes that are emerging, right? The notion of charting a course, the history of our stories. And I want to take a moment to ground us before I introduce our next speaker, because it's so appropriate given what he's done internationally. This White House campus is roughly 18 acres. And the site on which the most famous piece of the property rests, or the mansion, right, the original White House, is a site chosen by George Washington in 1792. And it was built over several years, and he's the only United States president who has not lived in the residence. John Adams was the first president to move in. It is a home and a symbol of power that was built by the hands of slaves. And it's those stories who we don't often hear about, right? So who are all the people that helped build this fabulous place we call the White House? This building, the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, has also had many names. And you're sitting here today. It was called the Old Executive Office Building. It was once the Department of State, Navy, and War. It is now the Executive Office of the President. And most of the staff who work for the President are in this building and right around us. And when you walk around this building today, stop and take a look at the fossils in the floor. Think about how many thousands of years it took to produce those fossils. Look at the 4,000 individually cast iron bronze banisters, and whose hands shaped those banisters, and how their names and their stories are not often heard in our histories. And we think about Megan's story, or we think about Jeff's story, or the story of Tech Hire that's just been launched. We think about how we connect with each other, and how in that connection we find time to tell each other our stories. Whether it's my friend Matthew, who uses Meetup to meet up folks for Frisbee, or others who politically organize, or friends who do any number of things, including many of you in this audience who use Meetup every single day. Meetup is a tool that begins to tell a new story for not only people here, but around the world. And I have the privilege of talking for a second about Scott Heiferman. Scott is an internet pioneer and a leader in the notion of building community. He started Meetup after seeing the potential for community renewal around the tragedies of 9/11. And now over 20 million people are part of meetups. 3 million of them in tech meetups that are changing lives. They're sparking industries, and they're creating jobs by creating real community. Scott founded the New York Tech Meetup, the world's largest meetup with over 40,000 members. He and his extraordinary team are headquartered in New York City. And I would invite you to start thinking about, as he comes up here right now, what is his story from Homewood, Illinois to New York? What are the things that motivated him and inspired him to transform a tool that didn't even exist, right? And what is it throughout the day that you're going to do in partnership with Scott to make this a more just and a more incredible world? Please join me in welcoming one of those partners, Scott Heiferman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I want to first and foremost thank three people who made this happen from the Meetup team. That's Kristen Hodgson, Katie Howley, and Andrea Murphy. Thank you guys for getting us here. And we're here today because a lot of people in this room are forging the future in a non-obvious way. People here are opening doors for people that are opening doors for people. I stole that line from Seth Godin, and I love it. And so that's what I'm going to talk about for a few minutes. But first, I do want to say, speaking of doors, thank you to Megan and her team for opening the doors to us here at the White House today and seeing the potential in people like you do. You and your team, the president, are making a difference in hosting us today. So let's please raise your hand if you are a tech meetup organizer. Okay, that's great. That's almost that's most of the room. There are 30,000 tech meetup organizers just in America, and you are 50 of the best. But don't rest your hands don't rest your hands, because I'm going to ask for you to raise them again. So raise your hand if people got jobs. If you can say that people got jobs because of your meetup. Okay, that's almost all of them. Raise your hand if you can say that people found funding because of your meetup. That's almost all. Raise your hand if your meetup helped a startup take off because of the exposure you got them? All right, raise your hand if people got training at your meetup that changed their life in some way. That's interesting. That's all of them. Raise your hand if people started a business or found a co-founder because of your meetup. Raise your hand if people got inspired because of your meetup, if it opened up a world to them. I know that that's true. Those hands, all those hands that are raised, those are hands that are about you creating opportunity for people. We're here today, invited here today, to talk about opportunity, how tech meetups will create opportunity for more people. So I'm not just the co-founder of Meetup, the platform. I was a tech meetup organizer. I started the New York Tech Meetup in 2004. This was a couple years after we started the company. And Meetup had been used for all kinds of things, all kinds of things under the sun, used by all kinds of people, like this Illinois state senator named Barack Obama for my home state. He used Meetup to run for U.S. Senate. Now, I don't know whatever happened to this guy, but meetups were booming, but there weren't many tech meetups at the time. I was inspired to start the New York Tech Meetup because I was hearing stories like how Steve Jobs' co-founder, Steve Wozniak, has this great quote where he says, if there were no homebrew computer club, there'd be no Apple, unquote. And Homebrew was this community where you could demo your startup and find the others. It gave them opportunity. Maybe Silicon Valley wouldn't be the Silicon Valley of today if communities like that in that place hadn't formed. So I started the New York Tech Meetup, and I was really excited, and one person showed up. I asked her to be my co-founder. Because no one else was there, and she just had this incredible energy, and her name was Dawn Barber. And now the New York Tech Meetup, as was mentioned, is 40,000 members strong, with endless stories of how it creates opportunity for people. Dawn is here today. Thanks, Dawn. Dawn, you created opportunity for people. Now there are tech meetups everywhere, in this room, from Alabama to Alaska, and you're all poised to grow your local tech economies. So I'm really excited to meet so many of you, and I only have a couple minutes I get to speak, but I want to mention a few people that I'm excited to meet. I'm excited to meet Fitzgerald Steele of the Iowa Web Developers Meetup, and not just because Iowa's my alma mater. But in 2008, floods devastated eastern Iowa. It was the 5th largest disaster in the U.S. And Fitzgerald says, and I quote, "Out here in the Silicon Prairie, we have tons of creative and technical talent, but we needed to build culture and critical mass. So our meetup, actually our network of meetups," he says, "was grown, and our discussions covered technical topics, career advice, job opportunity sharing, and just plain networking and socializing. Together, we are imagining and recreating the culture of this area." Fitzgerald, you are creating opportunity for people. I'm excited to meet Carolyn Finch from the Charleston Women in Tech Meetup. I heard about how she has grown this mentorship program within the meetup and that it's really working. And she's surprised at how willing and giving people are to be mentors. And she says, quote, "These mentors are an essential uniting factor to make these women feel welcome and encouraged to discover and pursue a career in the tech industry." Carolyn, you're creating opportunity for people. I'm excited to see Jamal and Felicia from Code Crew Meetup. They're a married couple. They lost their non-tech jobs in the recession and started the Code Crew Meetup to teach themselves coding by connecting with others to learn together. So now they're fully employed as developers who run the Code Crew Meetup to pay it forward and teach others the same skills. And they credit Meetup with changing lives in a transformational way. They're local celebrities in Harlem because Code Crew Meetup is now 7,000 members. Guys, you are creating opportunity for people. I'm excited to meet Kakad of Minnesota Web Design Meetup. I love this line he said when he wrote something. He said that when he took over this meetup, people said, quote, this kind of thing is not a Minnesota thing. It's not a Minnesota thing. When you hear these stories, I mean, I hope you hear similar things in your city. And now tech meetups in Minnesota are booming. Katanya, you're creating opportunity for people. I'm excited to meet Paola Maldonado. She's the organizer of the New York City Tech Latinas Meetup. She was an administrative assistant who learned iOS development at a meetup. Now she's an iOS developer at BuzzFeed, and she started the New York City Tech Latinas Meetup to pay it forward. Paola, you're creating opportunity for people. Anyway, I can go on. I need to stop, the sign says. These stories bring some words I heard to life that I heard President Obama say that I just love. He says, we are the ones we're waiting for. The 50 tech meetups represented in this room have harnessed the power of community to create high-octane engines of economic growth and innovation. You know it. You know it if you're doing it. You know it. At Meetup HQ, we're most proud of people meeting each other who might not otherwise meet, of good things happening that might not otherwise happen. That's what you're doing. Opportunity is everything. Real opportunity for anyone to pursue their dream, to be proud, to realize their potential, and have a chance. Regardless of what school they might have gone to, or if they had the right pedigree, or if they looked the part. It doesn't always work out that way. Community unleashes opportunity, and people have more power than ever to create community. That's why today at this podium, I'm declaring my candidacy, throwing my hat in the ring. No, not for president, but to be the biggest cheerleader for what you guys are doing. We want a world filled with real local community. And Megan, thanks again for opening the doors today. I hope everyone learns from each other today. That's what meetups are all about, because the person sitting next to you is smarter than you about something.